Good evening. I'm Ed Murrow. The name of the program is Person to Person. It's all live, there's no film. Tonight we'll be visiting first with that fine jazz artist, Dizzy Gillespie, and his wife. And then we'll be dropping in on that most pleasant writer and lecturer, Emily Kimbrough. We'll be ready to go in exactly 30 seconds.
Good evening. I'm Bob Dixon. The name of our sponsor is the American Oil Company. You know, there's only one motor fuel that actually guarantees its performance in your car. Yes, only Amoco gas guarantees no lead fouling in the engine, 100% power. And that's because Amoco gas is refined to give your car the highest natural octane it can use without the use of lead. The result, a cleaner, better running engine, more power, more mileage. And now here's Ed Murrow.
John, otherwise known as Dizzy Gillespie, has been blowing a horn as long as he can remember. He's 38 years old. He took up the trumpet as a boy in Cheraw, South Carolina, and blew his way north to New York, his headquarters for the past 19 years. Dizzy is an outstanding trumpeter, band leader, and jazz musician. He is, in addition, one of the originators of that brand of jazz known as bebop. A month ago, Dizzy Gillespie returned from a new assignment, unofficial American ambassador of jazz. He had toured for 2 months a belt of Middle Eastern countries ranging from Pakistan to Yugoslavia. He makes a similar tour to South America this fall. Dizzy Gillespie and his wife Lorraine, who used to be a dancer, own this house in Corona, Long Island. They rent most of it and live in only 4 rooms. A neighbor just a block away is another great trumpeter, Louis Armstrong. Good evening, Dizzy.
Good evening, Ed.
What was that you were playing?
Well, you wouldn't recognize it, but it was whispering, a variation on whispering.
You know, somehow I just didn't recognize that tune.
Well, I guess this was the variation with the sort of a counter melody on whispering, I guess you would call it.
Dizzy, that bent horn of yours is a trademark. Who dreamed it up?
Well, actually, it was an accident, Ed. And about 3 years ago, on January the 6th, I was giving a party for my wife down at the place on 45th Street. And we had all of these different performers come up to perform at her party, and I had to go to this jockey show. So when I got back, Stump and Stumpy had fallen over one another over my horn. So when I got back, the bell was sticking up like this. And so I didn't want to be nasty or anything since it was my wife's birthday, so I picked the horn up and started playing it, and it was a very strange sound coming from up here instead of from down here. So when I got out near Chicago, near Elkhart, Indiana, I told the Martin company who makes my horns to make me up one. I drew it out for him and told him to make it up for me, and he said, "Man, you crazy," one of those things. So I said, okay, maybe I am, but I want a trumpet made like that. So he made it up, and I've been playing it ever since.
Dizzy, it's just about a month that you're back from your tour of the Near and Middle East. Now that you've had a little time to think about it, what stands out most in your mind?
Well, the ancient cities stood out most in my mind, Ed, because some of them, civilization on top of civilization, 4 and 5 different civilizations in this one place. And in Lebanon, I remember one place there, they had about ridden civilization, about 5 civilizations on top of one another. And some of them about 3 years before the coming of Christ. And that sort of struck me as being way back.
Yeah, it sure is. Dizzy, do you feel these musical tours are really promoting a better understanding of America?
Yes, I think so. the propaganda over in the Near East and the Middle East and Asia is that that they treat us pretty badly over there, and one thing that helped was to see the mixed band and the boys all friendly and everything, and me being the leader of the band, they couldn't understand that at all, and I think it was a very, very, very good thing. They should send some more things over.
Did Mrs. Gillespie go along on that trip?
Yes, she did.
This must have been an interesting experience for her. Did she enjoy it?
Well, I'll let you ask her if she's around here. I'll go over and call her. Lorraine?
Good evening, Mrs. Gillespie.
Good evening, Mr. Merrill.
Dizzy and I were just talking about your travels. How did you like the trip?
Oh, I loved it.
Well, we really should give you more time to think about this, but offhand, what would you say impressed you most?
Well, the way some of the families I saw suffering. They were so poor. Babies suffering. They couldn't get the nourishment that they needed. And clothes all worn and ragged. I just cried most of the time.
Dizzy, this trip must have given you plenty of opportunities to pick up souvenirs, or do you go in for that sort of thing?
Yes, I do, Ed. And if you'll come downstairs here with me for a moment, and I'll show you some of the things that I picked up over there.
Well, on our way downstairs, Dizzy, why don't you show us around a little?
All right. Well, this is the dinette here, and it's pretty small, but sort of adequate for just we two.
Looks very nice.
And this is where my wife cooks up that good spaghetti. She's terrific with it. I'll see you around here.
Right. Well, we finally made it. Dizzy, is this where you do your practicing?
Yeah, this is where I do most of it, Ed. I rehearse down here quite a bit with the band. We sort of dream up some of these arrangements that we make down here with the piano and things.
Now, what about the souvenirs that you brought?
Oh, here's a pipe that I bought in Turkey, in Istanbul, a mesham with a lion's head on it. I thought it was pretty clever, the lion's head. You don't see many of these over here. And also over here, I bought some chessmen. I'm quite a chess enthusiast in Yugoslavia, in Belgrade.
Are you as good at chess as you are on the trumpet?
No, I'm afraid not. I just sit down and work out different problems that I see in the book and in the newspapers and things like that.
Dizzy, when's the last time you went back home to South Carolina?
Well, it's been quite some time. In fact, matter of fact, I've never played there since I've been playing professionally, but I would love to go back and play, let the people find out what I'm doing up here instead of listening to records and television and radio to see me in person.
Well, maybe they're looking at you right now. You went to school in Chiraw, didn't you?
Yes, I did. And then I went to school part of the time in Chiraw, and then I got a scholarship in Laurinburg, at Laurinburg Institute in North Carolina to play trumpet. Seems as if the dean's son, who was a trumpet player, graduated that year, and they didn't have a trumpet player on the scene, so I made it.
Dizzy, I'm sure you must have been asked this many times, but exactly what is bebop?
Well, I'll tell you, it's just a sort of a style of jazz, a feeling that we have for jazz that, well, maybe you know what, I can't explain it so well, but maybe I could play it on the piano for you and
Good.
sort of show you a couple of things that we do. I take a tune like How High the Moon, which is one of the like standard numbers that the musicians usually jam off.
Yes.
I play it sort of straight for the first time, and I'll show you what we do to it. Let's see. That's part of it. So we say,
And you do this same thing on the trumpet?
Oh, yeah, a little bit. Of course, that is my major instrument, the piano. I've been sort of fooling around with since I was about 3 or 4 years old.
Now show us how you do it on the trumpet, will you?
All right, I'll take a number by Gordon Jenkins here, say Whispering, and I'll do a little variation while they're playing the melody. I'll do a little variation. Let's see. Go, Joe!
Thanks very much.
A little bit, anyway.
Mrs. Gillespie, do you ever find it unnerving to have to listen to music like this around the home all the time?
Well, Mr. Murrow, it's all right sometimes, but I really like a variety of music.
Well, are you musical, too? Do you play an instrument?
No, Mr. Murrow, I just take care of the musicians.
That's a full-time job, is it?
Yes.
Dizzy, your trumpet and music must mean an awful lot to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, but the most important thing is my wife Lorraine here. The most important thing in my life, I think. And then comes music. After that, I guess.
Do you ever play rock and roll stuff?
Well, we play a little bit of everything. We try. Well, that's not actually new to me because I've been hearing that type of music ever since I can remember. When I first started playing, that was, in fact, down south where I'm from. That was the only music I heard.
Uh-huh. Well, Dizzy, thank you very much for letting us come and visit you tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Gillespie. Very pleasant indeed. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
In just a moment, we'll take you for a visit with writer and lecturer Emily Kimbrough.
Americans on the road driving millions of cars, the finest, most efficient in history. But automotive engineers are worried. Too many complaints. Engines knocking, misfiring, losing performance. Why? Laboratory tests gave the answer. Engines fouled by lead from leaded gasolines. Lead deposits on pistons that get glowing hot cause pre-ignition. Lead deposits that smother spark plugs weaken the spark. Of all gasolines, only one left no lead deposits. White, unleaded Amoco gas. No lead fouling on pistons. No lead fouling on spark plugs, valves. Refined to the highest natural octane on the road without lead, only Amoco gas guarantees no lead fouling, no lead deposits. Only Amoco gas is all power, no lead, 100% power. You see the difference when you buy it. Only Amoco gas is clear white. You'll see the difference when you drive in alert performance, more miles per gallon. Next time, get this white unleaded Amoco gas. Look for this Amoco sign. Now here's Ed Murrow.
Emily Kimbrough is a writer, lecturer, humorist who is in such demand that almost always she's working. Miss Kimbrough was born in Muncie, Indiana, grew up in Chicago, and became a fashion writer. She quit her first career while she was managing editor of Ladies' Home Journal to raise her twin daughters, Alice and Margaret. Emily Kimbrough started her second career, the business of making people laugh, 14 years ago, when she wrote Our Hearts Were Young and Gay with Cornelia Otis Skinner. Since then, she has given over 500 lectures, authored 7 books, written for movies and television, had her own radio show, and composed a few dozen magazine articles. When she isn't touring and talking, Emily Kimbrough lives here in New York City. She has a 6-room apartment in what was once a Manhattan mansion. Good evening, Emily.
Good evening, Ed.
How long have you been home from the lecture circuit?
Oh, I've been home since about the middle of May.
Well, you live out of a suitcase a good part of the year. Do you carry any special gear for the lecture business?
I do. I carry some gear, and I carry what you might call some lack of gear. That is to say, I don't wear hats because my hair's long and I wear a braid, and hats somehow don't sit well, so to speak.
Yes.
So I carry a variety of veils, and that makes packing somewhat easier. I don't have to take a hat box. Well, then I take along a carrier of books. Many people take that, but I think perhaps the contents are a little unusual. Besides the work that I'm doing, I fill that container with detective stories and double cross-sticks for the trip.
Well, Emily, now that your talking season is over, I suppose you're in the midst of your writing season.
Well, I am, as a matter of fact, Ed, but to tell you the truth, the writing season goes on all the time while I'm talking, because that's part of my gear, too. That is, I write by dictaphone. I use a dictating machine because I get my impressions by ear. Some people have an acute visual memory, and I do better by ear. And so I'm like the ancient mariner. I have to tell a story. And so when I am telling my story by the dictating machine, this dictaphone, I hear myself telling it. And then I know how I want it to sound.
What were you writing today?
Well, I'm in the midst of a book. I'm having a book. I don't know precisely what I was writing, but if you'd like to hear a little of it, you might remember this is only the rough draft. The polishing comes after, but I can let you hear it.
Good.
Not recognizable. But we recognized aloud to one another that we were walking along the shore of the Bay of Marathon.
Well, that's about the way it goes, and then my secretary takes it off on the transcribing machine, and then I begin the polishing.
Well, then your writing and lecturing styles are somewhat similar, aren't they?
They're really synonymous, because I'm always telling the thing, you see, either to the audience or to the audience of my own ear.
Well, do you have any special Emily Kimbrough system for, what do they call it, warming up an audience, getting the people ready to hear what you have to say?
Well, I don't know that I have any particular system, but I do usually start with an anecdote. As a matter of fact, the lecture, so to speak, is mostly anecdotal. But I have been telling recently something that happened to me earlier in the winter, and that was at a lecture date, I came out on the platform with the chairman. She began her introduction, and we were both aware of a hissing sound in the wings, and we looked off, and there stood a man in a workman's overall, obviously an engineer, and he held a screwdriver in one hand, and with the other he was beckoning imperiously. And the lady chairman, and he was the one who was hissing, the lady chairman turned back to the audience very flustered, said she would have to ask him to excuse her, that something off stage demanded her attention, and she left the stage and me. And I waited a moment, not knowing what else to do, and presently she returned, even more flustered than when she had left, and brushing past me, she flung herself over the lectern and said, "Before we continue with the program, I have a very unhappy piece of news to communicate. Word has just been given me in the wings that there is a screw loose in our speaker."
Emily, of all your interests, what single thing do you enjoy most?
Oh, well, it's not actually a single. It came in pairs. I have twins. And as a matter of fact, they happen to be here tonight. By the way, Ed, before I leave, I want to show you, because I think it might be interesting, that this is the jacket of my new book called Water, Water Everywhere.
Yes.
And that will then come out in that extraordinary color process. And this is the front of it, and then this is the back. The illustrations of our Mircea Vasiliu, perfectly charming artist. And before I go on to the other members, I have to reveal that this is one of the illustrations, and one of my daughters considers this the nicest portrait of her mother that has ever been made. It's mother on a donkey, and she wants to have it to keep on her bureau. So
When's the book due for publication?
The book is due for publication in the fall, and I have a deadline of August the 1st. And keep your fingers crossed, I beg of you.
I will.
Well, now my major interests are right here. They're my twin daughters, and I'd like very much for you to meet them. And also my eldest grandson. But first, my daughters. Hello, darling.
Good evening, Mother.
Ed, this is Alice McCurdy over here.
Good evening, Mrs. McCurdy.
Good evening, Mr. Murrow.
And this is Margaret Kuhn.
Good evening, Mrs. Kidd.
Good evening.
Actually, they have always been known, the twins, as B and A, or A and B. And this is A, McCurdy, and this is B, Kuhn. And then there's another B, and this is Button, my oldest grandchild, B's Button.
Good evening, Button.
Good evening, Mr. Merle.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm fine, too. Button, how old are you?
4.
Uh-huh. You're up a little late tonight, aren't you?
Yes.
You like it?
Yes.
You like to stay up this late every night?
Yes.
What about your plans for the summer? You're doing any swimming?
Yes. I did a back flight on my back.
Ah,
I'm tired of swimming.
wonderful. Now, A and B, have either of you inherited your mother's writing talent? A?
No, I'm afraid I haven't, but my sister has.
Why, A, shame on you. You have an activity that's far more exciting than writing. Tell about your ice skating.
Well, I do give instruction at New Haven Skating Club. But the thing I like best is helping my husband. He's a modern architect, and while he's busy doing all the drawings, why, I do the models, which is great fun.
That
Now,
must be
A
great
would,
fun.
Ed, sorry,
Yes.
A wouldn't tell you this, Ed, but swelling with maternal pride, I must tell you that A has just qualified as one of the national judges in ice skating.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations. What about you, B?
Well, I do some writing, not quite like Mother. I do mostly children's stories and things, and some poetry and school teaching.
Mm-hmm. What do you teach?
Here
I've
I
given
go.
it up.
Wow.
I've given it up to be a mother, but I have taught in 2 schools here in New York, English and with the upper school children.
Oh, yes. Emily, I've heard that you and your daughters have fun doing music together. Is that right?
We have great fun. I can't say that it's fun for anyone else, but we enjoy it. And if you're feeling strong, Ed, we'll give you a little sample of it, but it takes
Good.
great courage on your part. And it's sometimes difficult to hear the music for the counting. So, B plays the flute and A plays the piano, and mostly we count. All right, darling? Let's take it fairly fast. We'll get through with it. 1, 2, ready. 1, 2, 3.
I'm still with you.
But
You
you're a brave man.
You didn't tell me Button was going to play. He was wonderful.
He's always where there's music. He loves it.
Seems to me that if the lecturing business should go bad, you can have an act in reserve right there in the family.
Well, I think it would always be kept in reserve. Far in reserve.
Emily, I know that your apartment used to be part of a great old New York mansion. What was this room that we're in now?
This was the dining room, Ed, and actually, in its original form, it went all the way back to that far wall that perhaps you can see.
Yes?
And then when apartments were made, one of the things that was done was to bring that back wall forward and then put a ceiling arbitrarily over that portion of the room, and that made a bedroom that is my bedroom above and another, my guest room on the other side. But then, because they wanted more light, they opened this wall and put the balcony. But the balcony, when I took the apartment, was not quite as you see it now. It just had a wooden railing around. And I happened to find that facade at an antique shop, and the great luck was that it fit exactly on the floor of the balcony.
Most unusual. Emily, to switch from your home to your travels, are you ever frightened by the thought of that post-lecture question and answer period?
Oh, and as a matter of fact, not long ago I was talking about that very subject, and I was begging actually that there should be more of a question and answer period than I think exists today. I was saying that it seemed to me that people now go to hear lectures the way women, in a sense, do their housekeeping mechanically, pushing the button for the vacuum cleaner, etc. They push the button for the lecturer and then turn it off. And I begged them to participate more than they have been doing. And so at the end of my lecture, which was only part of a forum, a woman came up to me. Mercifully, she did not do this in the public question and answer period, but she came up to me afterward and said, Miss Kimbrough, you do want people to ask questions. Yes, I said, I do, that being what I'd been talking about. Well, she said, I have a question I want to ask you. Where do you get your hair dyed? Well, when I'd recovered from that shock, I said, well, as a matter of fact, I don't. And she smiled and said, well, that's quite all right, Miss Kimbrough, I understand. You don't need to tell me. So anyway you look at it, it was a complete failure.
Thank you very much, Emily. A and B. Button. Good night, Button.
Good night. Good night.
Good night. Sleep well.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
We'll be back in a moment.
Hey there. That's a good catch. Say, how about you folks having one of these wonderful, gay-colored, bouncy, beautiful Amoco play balls for your family's fun this summer absolutely free? Well, here it is, a big 15-inch beauty. And believe me, it's a real wonderful one, too, made of rugged latex rubber. Now, these balls are on display at your Amoco dealers. So stop in and ask for that summer oil change or approved Amoco lubrication that your car needs right now, and get your Amoco play ball absolutely free. Do it real soon, huh? And now here's Ed Murrow.
Those are some of the people who made tonight's program possible. There are many others who make person-to-person possible, and tonight, as we take leave for the summer, I would say my thanks to another handful of the thousands of persons who have helped us go visiting on Fridays, from Connecticut to California, from Minnesota to North Carolina. First, to the technical crews who have worked in 110-degree temperatures and in freezing snowstorms, in homes as small as one room and homes spread over 320 acres. Here are the crews who have done some 150,000 miles of visiting with us this year. And those crews have worked closely with more of our friends, the staff of the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, the local phone and power companies, and there are more, Jack Beck on the West Coast and Nancy Camerata, the assistant to the producers. There are porters and policemen, maids and mayors, elevator men and handymen. And always, wherever we visit, there are neighbors to whom we are indebted as we are to you who accompany us, and to the people in the studio who handle the lights and the cameras, who have made it possible for me to say each night at this time, good night and good luck.
Will your watch slip through your wedding ring? Will it pass the famous Elgin ring test like this? If it won't, get back in style with a new Elgin Petite, the world's smallest watch from $33.75. Make the ring test with an Elgin Petite and any other watch of similar price. You're sure to choose an Elgin Petite, world's smallest watch from $33.75. Exclusively yours from Elgin, the beautiful way to tell time.